I'd like to also encourage people to realize where you are matters. You don't have to go to exotic places to be inspired for poetry, though it's not a bad idea. You can do that, but you don't have to go to exotic places far away, and you can be surprised by life that is literally underneath your feet and right in front of your eyes.
This is People and Their Poems, a podcast about the poems that make a difference in our world. Host Sandy Carlson talks with people who have become influenced by poetry and who have become a poet or a supporter of this literary form. People and Their Poems is presented by Orenaug Mountain Publishing. Thanks for joining us today.
Joanne, your book, I Know Myself as Thief, is a work of many arts and beautiful pieces. Could you talk to us about what your inspiration has been as a poet and a photographer over the years?
I'll be happy to, because these are two great loves of mine that I now have the opportunity to share in this much wider venue than I may have had, before. Well, when I started thinking about, what in each of them inspires me, I think I always have to say, life as I experience it. That's what you're seeing, and that's what you're reading and listening to. So wherever I am, or whatever I see happening, I love animals. I pay attention to the weather, the seasons. I'm very much in touch with my religious tradition, my religious beliefs. So I was, raised as a Catholic, and certainly living as a nun in the Catholic Church. Church structures, buildings, architecture, as well as Bible stories. I like retelling Bible stories in a new way, and all of these things, but also with them and underneath them, I really am inspired by feeling. How am I feeling about a particular moment? How am I feeling, about a particular situation, world situation? So I would say all of that, life as I experience it, including the feelings that are involved in what's going on.
I see. And I've known you for many years as the art and spirituality director at Wisdom House Retreat and Conference Center in Litchfield, and seeing your art on that campus, as well as in the beautiful mailings. It was always a treat to get the mailings from Wisdom House with your photos in them. And I used to cut them out and save them and put them in my calendar. So it's a real treat to see everything in one place and to have a portable version of your work. How do you hope your audience will connect with your work when they open the book?
Well, I hope that they may have some of these experiences, okay? Maybe awe, maybe wonder, hopefully peace, and maybe it's something that's seen as funny as well, or sad at times. But I guess in general, I'd like them to be surprised by it. I always see a surprise as being a gift to someone. So if they don't continue to think in the same way that they always have thought, and I hope maybe they might even say to themselves, oh, no, I never thought of it in this way, if they're reading one of the poems or looking at one of the photos. Oh, boy, I never saw that before. So to give them another perspective, I think that's what I'm looking for, because that's what I enjoy finding myself when I read other people's poetry, or when I'm out there, with my camera, just looking around, and especially I love to get up close. And so hopefully people might even say, well, I never saw such and such up that close before. So all of these things, I think, will bring them a renewed respect for the world, for all of creation, and hopefully have what I might call a boomerang effect. That is, then have them ask themselves, and what about my life?
Yeah, I was just thinking about some of the photos and some of the poetry and what you said about surprise, and that is the experience. It's first, oh, this being drawn into what is at once familiar and new at the same time, and then seeing each moment as a celebration of life and its rich mysteries. So I think that was my experience. So and it was a joy to see it come together. Would you read from the book for us so that our audience can get a sense of your style?
Sure. Well, one thing that is always an inspiration to me and is always new, and that is the seasons of the year. So I thought I'd start. Let me just turn the page here. With the poem I simply call Winter. Winter stormed in tonight with the audacity of a prodigal, smothering all established life forms under the freezing blanket of a snowfall. Days have passed with no indication of its arrival. Nights have gone by, wrapped in the moderate winds of late autumn. But now we have been conquered, and an all-certain winter has us in her grips.
It's beautiful and has its share of surprises in it. And the idea of winter storming in, and that the energy and the power, in contrast with the softness of the poem, it's just an incredible um, tension that you create that really is amazing.
And that was the effect of one night, of one night of my experiences. Because I really do love living in an area of the country and an area of the world where we have 4 seasons. And now, certainly, with all the considerations now we're taking in relation to the problems of the change of climates, you know, um, I really do appreciate the individuality that we can experience because it brings out, different things within us. And I'm grateful for it. And well, the next poem has to do with the summertime and has to do with summer rains. Very short poem. Warm, moist, the waiting. Slowly, the earth body postures to be loved again. Warm, moist, the waiting. Slowly, the earth body postures to be loved again. I just saw the rain as loving the earth and the earth appreciating it and the earth giving itself over to the life that's going to come from it.
That's lovely. I'm glad our listeners will have the opportunity to enjoy the contrast with the two poems and the surprises that come with them. Speaking of surprises, was there anything that surprised you as you were going through the process of collecting your poems and your photos for this collection?
Yes, and I'd like to talk to that, but before leaving this one section, I would just like to read to our listeners the poem from which I took the title of the book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just thought that would be something else they might like to hear.
Okay.
Turning pages here. Okay. Of course, the title of the book is I Know Myself as Thief. And many people have said to me, whoa, what does that mean? So let me read to you the poem which I have entitled Reading Other Poets. And this is the way it goes. When I sit in the awe at the sound of their work, and I listen to the journeys of their hearts, and I walk in the richness of their memories. I know myself as peace. I know that the envy in my heart wants most of all to steal their silence. When I sit in the awe of the sound of their words, listen to the journeys of their hearts, and walk in the richness of their memories, I know myself as peace. I know the envy in my heart wants most of all to steal their silence. What I envy the most, because I know that's where poetry comes from. Poetry comes from things exterior to us, but that exterior being drawn into a core of silence. And the listening that comes from silence, well, never know what it's going to bring about.
Thank you. Thank you for that third poem. That's lovely.
Thanks for asking. Now, the last thing that you said in terms of what, what was I surprised by in relation to the whole, process of putting this together? Well, it was truly a surprise to me when working with both the poetry and the photography, because in years gone by, people have been very supportive of me in terms of my poetry and in terms of the photography. And often they've said, oh, why don't you put a book together with both of them? And altogether, I'm putting that in the back of my mind and I'm saying, good idea, but when I finally got to do this, one real gift that I received was that I realized I had the opportunity to have a deeper relationship and more respect for the feeling inside my poems and the feelings behind my photography. I never thought of this before until this experience. You see, I was at a point of frustration in trying to find and fit, poetry with the photographs. And it was at that time that a friend of mine gave me some good advice. Simple advice, but it changed everything. And the advice was this. First of all, to lower my level of frustration, she said, you don't have to match up any obvious connection between the picture and the poem, but, and this was a simple suggestion, see if there's some link between them. And that little sentence changed everything. And let me give you one example. One of the poems in the book, and which I've written, is about my mother's death and how it affected me. And I was having difficulty dealing with this even a number of years after she died. But while going through some photos, some in my computer and then some just in loose pictures that I had in a few boxes, I found a picture of a black and white print, a little 3.5 by 5, a black and white print of a lifeguard's chair on a deserted beach in wintertime. And when I saw it, and this picture was taken over 30 years ago, when I saw that picture that I hadn't seen in a long time, I knew that it was right. I realized that the picture was saying loneliness, emptiness, even abandonment. It was the right picture for that particular poem. And again, it brought the poem to life within me and on paper. And again, this new, deeper relationship and more respect for all the other feelings that I have within the other poems. And then, of course, which I would not have said this many years ago, realizing the feelings behind my photography. And so that photograph and that poem both had the same feelings in them. I would have never thought of it without that simple little piece of advice. Well, why don't you just try this with no pressure behind it? And because of that, I was free to enter into the pictures I was going through, and of course the poem that was already within me. So that was something that was a big lesson that I am just so grateful for.
That's so interesting. And I think in looking at the book, you spoke earlier about silence, and there's this invitation to the silence of listening that the photos create and sort of open up the space for the poems. And in this creative conversation between the two media in the one book, it really is an incredible experience to take the collection as a whole in that way. They're works of art and meditations.
Mm, yeah. And, you know, being made specific in certain ways, in the poetry, but leaving it much more open to the person who was looking at it, to the person who's reading it, and that's what I hoped it would do too, give people that space to interpret or reinterpret, however you might want to say it. Thank you.
Yeah. So would you, based on your experiences, would you have advice for people who want to grow art in their lives?
Well, I'd love to give you just a few little things. I do have a collection of a list of advice, so to have picked out a few of them was not that easy, but I'd like to offer these couple. Okay. Well, first of all, so much of art is about ordinary things, ordinary things. And so I would encourage them to cultivate a respect for the ordinary, to pay more attention to it, to know it more fully, because it does matter and it has the deepest of meanings within it. If, again, as you were just saying a moment ago, we give silence a chance. Number two, I'd like to also encourage people to realize where you are matters. You don't have to go to exotic places to be inspired for poetry, though it's not a bad idea. You can do that, but you don't have to go to exotic places far away, and you can be surprised by life that is literally underneath your feet and right in front of your eyes. Because there are just so many different worlds that are right here where we are. Three, I would suggest be open to see things at a different angle. And this, I think, brings forth in us, the childlikeness. Be a child again. Try to remember. Pick up something, how children, pick up something, and they turn it around. They turn it upside down. They turn it inside out. They possibly even stomp on it sometimes, but they engage with life from all different angles. Examine it as if it's the first time you're seeing it. Try it. Because you see, it brings you not to just a greater truth about the object that you might be looking at, but it also brings you to greater truth within yourself. And it also makes you see beauty in different ways. And if someone might say, well, how should I start? I would suggest open your eyes and open your ears. And also listen to yourself. Be an active observer of your daily life. And respect what comes from all of it. Because if you listen well, life will talk to you. Because life wants to communicate with us. And then also, just in general, be open to experiment. That's what I meant in terms of turning it on all its sides. A quick little story. Long time ago, I went with a friend to a mall. Don't even remember what we were buying. But when we came out of the store, I noticed a little dandelion coming up out of the concrete. And so I said to her, I'll be right there. I just want to take a little picture of this dandelion. And so there I was, taking the dandelion from one side, the other side. And then suddenly I looked up and she was coming right at me with the car to pick me up. And she stuck her head out the window and she said, would you please tell me how many sides are there to a dandelion? So I said, well, a few, but I mean, I always remember that story. How many sides? Well, you just never know until you get close to that dandelion and you see it. So
That's great.
experiment.
Yes. And as our dandelions are making their appearance in our lawns now, it's a great story to keep in heart,
Right. So those are just a few little pieces of advice for kids.
Well, thank you so much, Joanne. That's super, super helpful, and just appreciate your time having this conversation about your amazing art. So thank you for being a part of People in Their Poems today.
Well, thanks for the invitation. Made all the difference in the world, Sandy.
You're welcome.
You've been listening to People in Their Poems. So glad you can join us. If you'd like to learn more about Orenaug Mountain Publishing and the services we provide, you can visit orenaugmountainpublishing.com. There you can learn about our publishing and website services, our published poetry collections, and our calls to submission, and about people and their poems. If you'd like to join our writing community and be published on the Orenaug Mountain Poetry Journal, please visit orenaugmountainpoetry.net for information about submitting and to sign up for our daily email list of published poetry. Again, this is People and Their Poems, presented by Orenaug Mountain Publishing. Have a great day.